An amazing truth revealed: how a homeless man's warning transformed lives in just 24 hours. Jake Evans stood at the enviable height of success in the heart of Chicago's corporate law scene, yet he felt a faint tremor beneath his polished exterior. Today had been another grueling marathon of meetings and negotiations, each one sharpening his reputation as a ruthless advocate. But little did he know that fate had something far more explosive in store. He stepped out onto the Chicago streets, the city vibrating with life. The evening air was brisk, yet his mind was entangled in the mess of case files and looming deadlines. As he walked with purpose, he passed a homeless man, disheveled and weary, sitting against the cold concrete clutching a tattered book. "Hey, you!" the man called out, startling Jake from his thoughts. There was something piercing in the man's gaze, like he could see straight through Jake's carefully curated armor, the one crafted from ambition, success, and a life spent chasing the American dream. "You're in danger, you know." Jake scoffed, dismissing the man as just another misguided soul. "Get a job," he muttered under his breath as he moved past. Yet the unease lingered, gnawing at his conscience. The words hung in the air like a specter. His daily grind had pushed family relationships to the edge, especially with Sarah, his sister. Her recent phone call echoing in his ears, pleas for him to reconsider what he valued, hit hard. But he brushed it aside as he always did. Later that night in his sleek apartment, every luxurious detail felt like a reminder of his loneliness. Surrounded by fine art and expensive gadgets, he found no solace. Instead, he wrestled with the internal conflict seeping into his bones, the encroaching shadows of his choices darkening his heart. Was this really all there was? Success devoid of human connection? The questions multiplied, illuminating the frayed ties that bound him to his sister. The next morning shattered with a shocking headline. The firm he dedicated his life to was unraveling from within. Corruption painted across the news like graffiti across the city. Jake's stomach churned, the weight of betrayal hanging heavy. He sat in his mahogany office, fingers trembling above the keyboard. Loyalty to the firm felt like a noose tightening around his neck, while a flicker of moral obligateness sparked within him. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Driven by an impulse he couldn't quite explain, he called Sarah. When she answered, her voice was soothing yet steady, recounting tales of the family's struggles, of resilience passed down through generations. For the first time in years, something ignited within him. Jake's resolve hardened as he sought out Elijah again, the homeless man now a beacon of the truth he had avoided. They met at the same corner where Elijah unfolded secrets about the firm that mirrored his own lost morals, revealing layers of corruption and deceit. As they delved deeper into the scandals that lurked just beneath the surface, Jake felt a war raging inside him. Would he remain shackled to the success he clung to, or would he risk it all for integrity? Just when he sensed a turning tide, a final shocking revelation fell like a cliff into darkness. Jake's world tilted violently, and he realized he was now caught in an inescapable vortex of consequences. The choices ahead loomed large, threatening to engulf him, leaving Jake wondering if he could reclaim his ideals without losing everything he had built. The taste of truth was bittersweet, and the clock was ticking down to an inevitable storm. The morning light streamed through the blinds of Jake's office, casting stark shadows across the walnut desk. He had spent the night awake, restless thoughts swirling in his mind like a storm, the details of Elijah's revelations constricting around him like a vice. Each piece of information peeled away the protective layers he had built around his ambition, revealing raw vulnerabilities he had long ignored. His mind flickered back to Sarah's words, their conversations playing out like a reel looping in his head. The weight of family tradition, the importance of integrity, and the echoes of simpler times tugged at his heart. He was not just Jake the lawyer anymore. He was Jake the son, the brother. an identity he had long set aside to chase an elusive ideal. Determination surged anew. He grabbed his phone and dialed Sarah's number. When she answered, he could sense her cautious optimism. "Jake, is everything okay?" "No," he admitted, the word surprising him as it broke the barrier he had erected between them. "I need your help. I have to talk about my firm and all the things I've uncovered. I can't ignore it anymore." Silence settled on the line like a delicate blanket, wrapping them in an uneasy stillness. "You're serious?" she finally said, her voice trembling. "You're ready to make a change?" He hesitated. "I don't know what it looks like, but I can't keep standing by while they destroy everything and everyone that matters. I'm scared, but I can't keep living in this shadow." The conversation empowered him. He could feel the energy coursing through his veins. He was ready to confront the implications, to face not just the firm head-on, but his own beliefs that had been warped by years of ambition at any cost. As he prepared to meet Elijah once more, a part of him hesitated. What if his allegations were just that, allegations? He needed proof, something undeniable. The very thought sent chills down his spine, but the seed of courage was sown within him. He was no longer running from the truth, he was running toward it. Arriving at the corner where they first crossed paths, Jake found Elijah waiting, a serene presence amidst the chaos of the city. Their meeting blended urgency and gravity. The stakes had never been higher. "Jake," Elijah greeted with a knowing smile. "You've come back." "I need your help to expose this," Jake stated, his voice steady despite the weight of uncertainty. "But I need proof. Do you have anything? Something concrete?" Elijah nodded slowly, pulling an old faded folder from his bag. "This isn't just gossip, this is documentation. Emails, meeting notes, everything shows a pattern. You're not alone in this fight." As Jake thumbed through the contents, urgency coursed through him. Each page revealed the depth of the web woven within his firm, and his resolve fortified. With a newfound sense of clarity, he felt the burden of years of compromise begin to lift. But as they plotted their course of action, a thought struck him like a lightning bolt. The firm wouldn't take this lightly. He would become embroiled in a battle that would test his ethics, professional survival, and personal convictions. "It's time to face them," he said quietly, steeling himself. "This will be war." The words hung heavy in the air. He could almost hear the distant sound of a clock ticking. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows, Jake realized the true battle was just beginning. In the depths of his mind, a darker truth lurked. Would he come out of this as a hero, or as collateral damage in a system designed to protect itself? Then came the cold, sudden flash of realization. Exposing the truth would mean confronting the very people he had trusted. The time had come to face the firm that had defined him, and it wouldn't be a battle without sacrifice. With his heart pounding, Jake took a deep breath. The reckoning awaited, and he couldn't turn back now. The moment of truth drew nearer. How far was he willing to go to reclaim his integrity, and who, if anyone, would stand beside him? The following morning, Jake sat across from Elijah in a small diner, the clink of cutlery and the aroma of coffee mingling with his rising anxiety. The vibrant green of the plants outside seemed a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside him. Every decision he'd made to climb the corporate ladder felt less like victory and more like an impending surrender. "Have you thought about how you're going to present this?" Elijah asked, cutting through Jake's spiraling thoughts. His stomach twisted. "Not really. I keep thinking about the repercussions, not just for me, but for everyone involved. If I expose them and I'm wrong—" Elijah leaned forward, eyes unwavering. "You've seen the documentation. This isn't speculative. It's real. You have a responsibility." Jake laughed bitterly, a brittle sound that echoed away in the chatter around them. "Responsibility? I've spent years avoiding it. I've rationalized everything I did, convinced myself it was for the greater good, but I've only built a house of cards." As they discussed strategy, Jake realized they were not just outlining legal maneuvers, they were carving a path through his own identity crisis. "It's killing me to think I could lose everything, including my job, my reputation. And what is it worth if that job is built on lies?" Elijah interjected sharply, awakening something deep within Jake that had long been dulled by ambition. What do I do if I face them and they don't back down? Jake's voice wavered. This wasn't just about the firm, it was about facing his own failures. Elijah glanced around, sensing the weight of Jake's internal struggle. You prepare. You get the support you need. But understand, you're not just fighting for yourself. There are others too who are counting on you to take this step. The enormity of it settled onto Jake's shoulders, pinning him beneath its gravity. His thoughts twisted like a tendril in the wind. What if those other voices, the ones who had suffered in silence, had the collective strength to push against the tides of complicity? What if I inspire others to stand up too? A flicker of excitement ignited in him, a spark against the oppressive weight of doubt. He imagined colleagues who had faltered, who could find courage if he did. What if I become the catalyst for a broader change? That's the mindset you need, Elijah affirmed, a hint of pride beneath the urgency. But it all starts with you. Are you ready to confront your fears and take that first step? Jake stared out the window, watching the rushing cars that had symbols of both his ambition and his entrapment. The sun broke through a cloud, catching the outlines of the buildings and illuminating the paths ahead. He turned back to Elijah, a newfound resolve rising within him. I can do this, but I need allies, people who understand the stakes. Can you help me reach out? Absolutely, Elijah replied, a smile breaking his earlier seriousness. We're in this together now. As they finalized their plans, Jake felt like he was preparing for a marathon rather than a single confrontation. However, with each strategic move, he uncovered more than just a battle cry. He embraced a renaissance of his character, reclaiming parts of himself he had long surrendered for the sake of ambition. Their meeting ended with a firm handshake, a promising vow that surged through the air. Jake left the diner with a mission. The storm within transformed into focus and purpose. He was ready to carve his name, not just as a lawyer, but as an advocate for truth. Yet as he stepped out into the bustling street, the reality of the looming confrontation loomed like a dark cloud over his bright vision. What if they don't want to change? Whispered the voice of doubt in the back of his mind. As he rounded the corner, determination mixed with trepidation, he caught sight of a familiar face in the crowd, someone who could either bolster his resolve or entrap him further. It was a colleague from his firm, and Jake's heart raced. He could either confront them now or retreat into the shadows again. This was no longer just a professional battle. It was his identity on the line. With each step forward, Jake was about to find out just how far he was willing to go to reclaim it. Would he emerge stronger, or would the very system he sought to dismantle consume him whole? Jake's heart pounded in his chest as he recognized Adam, a junior associate at the firm known for his quiet demeanor but competent work ethic. Adam was someone who played by the rules, always sticking to the guidelines, unruffled by the stormy environment of rotating promotions and cutthroat competition. Yet in that moment, Jake sensed something undefinable in Adam's presence. Perhaps he was just as entangled in the web of complicity. Jake approached him, fighting against both the gravitational pull of fear and the exhilarating rush of purpose. "Hey, Adam," he said, forcing a casual tone. Adam turned, surprise flickering in his eyes. "Jake, I didn't expect to see you here. Everything okay?" Jake swallowed hard. "Actually, I need to talk to you about something important. Can we step aside?" They moved to a nearby park bench, the atmosphere quieting slightly in the midday sun. The park was a sanctuary among office buildings, offering patches of nature where the relentless grind of work felt distant. "What's this about?" Adam asked, a hint of concern in his voice. Jake hesitated, weighing his words carefully. "You know how things are at the firm. All the pressure, the rumors. I've come across some information that suggests there's a lot more going on behind the scenes." A flicker of something, recognition or alarm, crossed Adam's face. "Are you talking about the financial reports?" Jake nodded. "I can't go into details now, but I'm planning to take a stand. I think it's time to expose the truth. I could use your help." Adam shifted uncomfortably, glancing around as if the trees themselves might overhear. "That sounds risky. Are you sure you want to do this? What if it backfires? What if we lose our jobs?" Each question echoed in Jake's mind, amplifying the weight of his resolve. I know it's a risk, but isn't it more dangerous to stay silent? What happens to us if we just let this continue? Adam looked down, mulling over the enormity of the situation. Jake could almost see the cogs turning in his mind. After what felt like an eternity, Adam met Jake's gaze, a flicker of bravery igniting in his expression. "You're right, but what do you have in mind?" Jake felt a surge of adrenaline. His voice steadied, passion overtaking tremors of uncertainty. "We gather our evidence, talk to the ones we trust, build a coalition. Support isn't just a cushion, it can be a weapon." The idea landed with a strange sense of clarity. The notion of shared experience, of not shouldering the burden alone, transformed his anxiety into an empowering force. "You've seen how people are suffering. If we stand together, we can change lives." Adam nodded slowly, his determination visibly hardening. "I can do that. I might need a bit of help navigating. This isn't my usual territory." "Let's map out a plan," Jake replied, feeling light compared to moments before. The impending confrontation felt more like a call to arms than a singular struggle. Facing the enemy seemed more achievable when he no longer felt alone. Yet with each step toward action, a darker thought flickered. What if they faced backlash that cost them everything they had worked for? He shook off the notion, reminding himself of the energy thrumming between him and Adam. They both were standing on the precipice of a personal evolution. Would they stumble back into the comfort of ambiguity, or leap forward into the possibility of integrity? "Yes," Jake said, the word imbued with conviction. "Together we can face what's coming." As they sealed their pact, a sense of purpose enveloped them, a shared commitment to not merely exist within the system, but to challenge it. However, amongst this burgeoning camaraderie lingered a piercing question, hanging in the air like a thick fog. If things escalated, what would they stand to lose? Jake's breath quickened as they stood to leave the park, a new reality crystallizing around him. The shadows of potential consequences loomed ever larger, but now they felt manageable, given the strength he felt in solidarity. As they walked back to the building, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that crossing this threshold marked not just a decision, but a foundational shift. It was time for the man in the mirror to step into the light, armed with both truth and the comrades he never knew he needed. The question remained, though, like a heartbeat echoing in his head. Were they ready for the inevitable confrontation with the very system that defined their lives, and what truths would emerge from the collision? As they re-entered the sterile confines of their corporate environment, Jake felt a palpable shift in the air. With every step he took towards his cubicle, an unfamiliar fire ignited within him. It was as if the usual hum of computers and the chatter of colleagues had faded into the background, replaced by an urgent buzz in his ears. Today was a turning point, not just for him, but for everyone within the firm. Over the next few days, Jake and Adam devised a discrete strategy. They broke down their plan into manageable segments, focusing first on gathering evidence. They created a secure email chain, sharing documents that raised eyebrows, anomalies in financial reports, discrepancies, and whispers of unethical behavior that had seeped into the company culture. Each piece of evidence felt like a brick in a fortress they were building, both for protection and for a potential offensive. Jake's confidence began to grow as he found himself in a newfound leadership role. This role invigorated him. His mind buzzed with ideas, and he found surprising efficiency in his decision-making. Conversations with supportive colleagues revealed hidden allies, each one a beacon of hope. They discussed strategies over silent lunches, exchanged techniques to uncover more layers, and gradually a coalition formed. Though still informal, it was pregnant with potential. Yet growing closer to this truth brought Jake face to face with uncomfortable realities within himself. He didn't just need proof, he needed to confront his fears. The commitment to expose the truth heralded not just external repercussions, but an internal reckoning. Would he truly stand his ground? Could he risk his career for the chance of accountability? Each night, Jake sat at his desk long after everyone else had left, wrestling with the weight of his choices. One evening, an unexpected email popped into his inbox, a notification from an anonymous source hinting at a clandestine meeting among senior management. The subject, "The future of our firm." His heart raced as he contemplated the implications of this meeting. They could glean critical insights, perhaps even evidence, but it was also a risky venture. He knew they had to attend, and he could sense Adam hesitating. "Are we crossing a line here?" Adam asked nervously, the shadows of doubt creeping back. The question lingered like a ghost. Jake met his gaze squarely. "What line? The line where we remain complicit?" The conviction in his voice surprised even himself. He hadn't just committed to a course of action. He had fostered a belief that change was possible. It was no longer merely about uncovering corruption, but also about transforming their own roles within the company, becoming advocates for authenticity rather than mere cogs in the machine. They decided to go armed with their gathering of intelligence. As they approached the building for the meeting, Jake's mental checklist rattled through his mind. Focus on the tangible outcomes. Gather as much information as possible. Set the stage for what comes next. With each step, they moved deeper into enemy territory. The atmosphere shifted the moment they crossed the threshold into that conference room. Tension coiled like a spring, ready to snap at any moment. He could feel adrenaline coursing through his veins, amplifying the stakes. It was a chess match now, the moves they made carefully calculated, and Jake was ready to play. "The future depends on this," he whispered to Adam, who nodded, to steeling himself for whatever revelations awaited them. What Jake didn't realize was that in threading the narrative of exposure, he was also threading the course of his identity, a transformation from a passive observer to an active player, driving himself deeper into a game whose rules he was beginning to rewrite. As the meeting commenced, Jake couldn't shake the uncomfortable premonition that the truth was veiled behind layers of corporate secrecy. He clenched his fists, focusing not on fear, but on the revelation that loomed just within reach. The time had come to face the architects of the very system he sought to challenge. What secrets would they unearth, and would they be ready to handle the fallout? As the senior management team began their deliberations, Jake's pulse quickened. The room filled with murmurs of optimism and ambitious projections, intoxicating notions of growth that felt eerily disconnected from the reality he knew. As slide after slide dripped with corporate jargon, hinting at expansion and profitability, he fought to suppress the rising skepticism that threatened to engulf him. Adam shifted in his seat, a physical manifestation of tension. The subtle exchanges of glances between them carved away the levity of the room. They were on the edge of something monumental, a confrontation not merely against policies or practices, but against the opioid fog of complacency that blanketed the company. The words of executives danced around their ears, but Jake focused on his breathing, striving for clarity amid the chaos. Suddenly, a line from the presentation pricked his skin like a needle. "We hold ourselves accountable to our standards, and our numbers reflect that." The falsity pierced through Jake's resolve, alighting a fire in his chest. Each falsehood exchanged in the guise of progress began to erode his earlier hesitations like a relentless tide. No longer could he sit back and allow their carefully constructed narrative to persist unchallenged. He stole a glance at Adam, noticing the growing resolve in his friend's eyes. They were in this together. They had fortified their commitment, and now it was time to act. In an impulsive moment, Jake raised his hand. The suddenness of his gesture drew looks of surprise, and he felt the weight of every gaze on him. "Excuse me," he said, his voice wavering slightly before steadying. "Can you elaborate on the measures being taken to ensure that we are indeed meeting our ethical responsibilities?" The question hung in the air, charged with tension. The executives exchanged looks, their smiles fading momentarily, and Jake felt a mixture of disbelief and determination coursing through him. He had crossed an invisible boundary, summoned courage that had lain dormant for too long. An executive shifted nervously, fumbling with his notes. "We are, of course, committed to our policies," he began, but Jake pressed on. "Policies only matter if honored in practice. Isn't that the real heartbeat of our firm? The integrity behind our actions?" His words took on a life of their own, echoing through the conference room. He was no longer voicing doubt, he was demanding clarity. Adam's eyes widened, and a rush of adrenaline surged through Jake as he felt the shift. A few murmurs of agreement trickled in from nearby colleagues, emboldening him. This was not simply about uncovering malfeasance, It was about redefining a corporate ethos and ensuring that their firm did not just exist, but thrived on authenticity. As the executives responded with scripted reassurances, Jake sensed Adam's hesitance giving way to resolve. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw their allies nodding subtly in support. It was small but significant, a crack in the facade of silence that surrounded them. They were not alone. The meeting began to spiral, executives grappling with Jake's challenge, and the atmosphere thickened with tension. It became clear that they had breached the protective bubble that isolated senior management from inquisitive eyes. The once polished presentation turned into a battlefield of accountability. Yet beneath the momentum, doubts loomed like storm clouds. Were they prepared for the repercussions? When the meeting concluded, a flurry of feelings assailed Jake. It felt as if they had opened Pandora's box, but with clarity came urgency. He needed to strategize with Adam and their coalition. What came next could tilt their entire career. In the days to follow, the whispers of dissent might grow louder, but at what cost? As Jake stepped out from that conference room, determination intertwining with anxiety, he realized that the struggle for authenticity might demand more from him than he was ready to give. And so it began, the delicate dance of truth and consequence. Would Jake find the strength to withstand the unfolding chaos, or would he become engulfed in the shadows of his own revelation? Each step he took echoed with the weight of his choices, and the question loomed like mist around him. How far was he willing to go to unearth the truth? Jake's thoughts raced as he left the conference room, the sounds of the executive's protestations still echoing in his mind. He felt a mix of exhilaration and trepidation surge through him, the adrenaline of having finally spoken out, battling against the weight of uncertainty he now carried on his shoulders. What game had he started? The stakes were no longer just about policy and ethics. They were personal. This was about the trajectory of his career and reputation. What would happen when the executives regrouped? Would they retaliate? And how would he navigate that landscape? In the days that followed, the atmosphere around the office shifted. Conversations that once floated like background noise became charged with urgency. A handful of colleagues approached Jake and Adam, voicing their curiosity about the presentation, asking questions that Jane had impassioned him to raise. His voice had ignited a flicker of rebellion. That spark lit a flame within him. As they sat huddled in a conference room, Jake felt a deeper connection among his peers. The walls, once so imposing, were now avenues for exchange. They exchanged ideas, realigning their core values against an encroaching tide of corporate complacency. Each discussion peeled back layers of fear and uncertainty. Jake realized that he wasn't just a cog in a bureaucratic machine. He was part of a family of committed individuals who sought change in the face of adversity. Nevertheless, with this newfound camaraderie, Jake also felt the shadows deepen. Would his allies remain loyal amid mounting pressure? A couple of mornings later, he could hardly sit still at his desk, replaying the last session in his mind. In that moment of truth, he had seized an opportune moment to initiate change, but he wondered if it had been enough. He began to see patterns everywhere. The emails circulating about strategic initiatives, the soft dynamic shifts in their superiors' behavior. Had they noticed his challenge? Had he triggered a reaction that could lead to their dismissal, or worse, his? Every evening he spent dissecting the day's interactions left him weary. By nightfall, he found solace in solitude, retreating to his kitchen table strewn with notes and scribbled diagrams. His mind traversed the fallout of accountability. This journey wasn't just about corporate ethics. It was a realization of his capability to influence change. Every fearful glance or cautious conversation merely fueled his ambition. The fracture between what was true and what they were fed widened. Then the moment arrived when his phone rang, the shrill tone jarring him back to the present. It was Adam, and though they had talked frequently since that day, Jake could feel the gravity of this call. "Jake, we need to meet," Adam said, urgency tinting his tone. "Things are escalating. We can't stay silent anymore. It's time to take the fight directly to them." Jake's heart raced. He had anticipated such a conversation, but now that it was here, he felt unprepared for the implications. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice steadier than the tumult within him. I mean, there's an all-hands meeting scheduled next week. They're rolling out something big, and we need to be ready. If we want to maintain our integrity, we can't let them push through initiatives that contradict our values. The challenge loomed ahead like a storm, and Jake felt the tide of destiny pulling him toward confrontation. The choice was clear. He could either write this off as another corporate charade or step forward into the eye of the tempest. He glanced out the window. The city felt alive with possibility just beyond his reach. Hope and fear intertwined like two serpents, and in those fleeting moments he found clarity. He would not hide behind another faceless slide or let this opportunity pass untouched. "Let's do it," Jake said, his voice ringing resolutely. He knew that following this path may lead to confrontation, but it was a vital step toward his authenticity. As they finalized their plans, Jake felt an invigorating pull. If they were going to challenge the institution, they had to approach it with poise, ready to attack the heart of the matter and emerge victorious. The clock was ticking, and the collective strength of their voices could forge a new corporate culture, or be silenced altogether. The moment for action loomed, and with a firm grip on his resolve, Jake recognized something monumental was about to happen. But in the back of his mind, that dreaded question lingered. Would their budding rebellion be enough to enact real change, or would they be crushed under the weight of their own convictions? Jake sat at his desk, eyes scanning the flurry of emails irrelevant to the growing turmoil in his mind. The conference room had become his sanctuary, the place where his voice had finally resonated and echoed back a challenge. Yet, as the week unfolded, anxiety surged within him, punctuated by every new email alert and murmur down the hall. It felt like a countdown to a reckoning. He glanced at the calendar. The all-hands meeting loomed ominously. Each tick of the clock seemed to echo his fears. What if the executives pushed their agenda without opposition? The colleagues who rallied behind him now felt like fragile alliances, the kind that could crumble under the weight of corporate wrath. In an attempt to regain control, he decided to meet with Adam earlier than planned. They found a quiet booth at a nearby cafe, the warmth of the coffee shop contrasting sharply with the cold calculations unraveling in Jake's mind. He arrived first, fidgeting with his notebook filled with ideas, potential strategies, and a barrage of concerns. When Adam appeared, he was all business. "We need to strategize. If we can't unite as a front, we won't stand a chance against their maneuvering. What's on your mind, Jake?" Jake hesitated, the chaos of thoughts colliding as he opened his notebook. What if we're wasting our breath? They might just dismiss us outright in the meeting. I mean, what real power do we possess? Adam leaned in, his voice steady and confident. "The power lies in truth. We have the moral high ground. If we frame our argument around integrity, client trust, and the long-term impact on the company image, we have a fighting chance. But we need to be united. If they see divisions among us, it will be our downfall." Those words struck a chord deep within Jake. For the first time, he felt the weight of responsibility shift from his own shoulders onto the collective, the burden shared among a group with common goals. It ignited something in him, a challenge to tap into his personal conviction while galvanizing those around him. "You're right," he said, newfound determination coursing through him. "We need to leverage our strengths and keep the focus on how our values translate into better business practices. We'll have to be fearless going in there. I want to suggest that we back our concerns with real examples that resonate with both clients and employees." Adam nodded, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. "Exactly, concrete examples will paint the picture. Let's talk to our colleagues, ensure everyone is on the same page. We need a unified front, and I trust we all carry the same concerns." As they mapped out their approach, Jake felt an evolution stretch within him. Each strategy they discussed revealed hidden strengths he hadn't recognized before: his ability to articulate, his skill in persuasion, and an aptitude for leadership born from a desire for authentic change. This was more than just a standoff with the upper management. It was a crucible for him to shed his old identity and embrace one of purpose. Throughout the following days, Jake engaged with more of his colleagues, listening to their concerns and aspirations. They shared stories that motivated him, a stream of discontent that coursed through their voices, tales that fortified his resolve. The spirit of camaraderie ignited with each conversation, creating a tapestry of shared values that stretched across the office. Finally, the day of the all-hands meeting arrived. Jake adjusted his tie and took a deep breath, feeling the collective energy swirling around him. As he entered the conference room, determination solidified. This was his moment, the culmination of weeks of grappling with his fears and hopes. But as he glanced around the table at the executives poised to speak, a chill crept down his spine. The confidence that had blossomed was abruptly tarnished by a question nagging at the back of his mind. Could they truly weather the backlash if their revelations unspooled across the boardroom? The moment of truth was at hand, and Jake stood at the precipice of his future, bracing for the response of an institution he had dared to confront. Would they rise to the occasion, or would he fall into the deeper unknown? Jake's heart pounded in his chest as he stepped further into the conference room, the air thick with tension. The table before him glimmered under harsh fluorescent lights, casting oppressive shadows that mirrored his apprehensions. He exchanged glances with his colleagues, the silent camaraderie forging a shield against the uncertainty looming from the executive perimeter. As the meeting commenced, the CEO launched into a presentation regarding the company's new direction, PowerPoints flashing images of growth and innovation. But Jake's focus faded, tuning out the buzz of corporate jargon. Instead, his mind gripped the weight of the impending moment, wrestling with the panic that burgeoned inside him. He realized he was now standing at a critical juncture, not only for his career, but also for the collective consciousness of his team. Adam's nudge pulled him back into the room. "It's almost time," he whispered, a steadying force that rekindled Jake's focus. Each heartbeat echoed a mantra. Speak up, stand tall. The raw conviction that had fueled his late-night strategy sessions burned brighter than ever. He could no longer ignore the call to action. When the floor opened for questions, Jake's hand shot up, quick and definitive. A hush fell over the room as the CEO acknowledged him, eyebrows raised in curiosity. The moment felt surreal. Weeks of collection, collaboration, and courage coalescing into this singular act of defiance. "Thank you for this update," Jake began, his voice steady despite the tremor in his gut. "But I believe we need to address a crucial concern the team has regarding the recent direction. We can't overlook the human impact behind these decisions. Transparency and integrity must guide our path if we wish to maintain the trust of our clients and employees." Murmurs sprang up around the table, a ripple of energy igniting a collective tension. Jake pressed on, emboldened by the shifting dynamics. "We need to prioritize not just profit, but our values. The recent feedback we've gathered from our clients highlights a disconnect between our practices and their expectations." A wave of adrenaline coursed through him as he deftly referenced specific anecdotes shared by his colleagues, weaving real-world implications into his argument. Each story bolstered his points, framing their unified concerns in stark relief against the corporate agenda. And with each passing second, Jake felt his fear transform into fierce determination. However, the executives sat unyielding. Their shell-like expressions betrayed little emotion, creating an atmosphere that stung with a mix of incredulity and disdain. Was he making headway, or was it falling flat? The doubt slithered in again, whispering insidiously. What if he jeopardized all the alliances he had painstakingly built? Then, like a lightning bolt, a voice thundered from the other end of the table. "Your concern, while noted, seems misguided. We're running a business, not a charity. Trust is earned through results, not ideology," declared the chief financial officer, his tone dripping with condescension. Jake's pulse raced. It was a challenge, an explicit reminder of the mountain he faced. Something within him shifted again, igniting the last vestiges of his anxiety into incandescent resolve. "I understand that results matter, but we risk everything if we ignore the voices of those who bring us success," Jake retorted, the intensity of his voice causing the room to lean in. "We need to be better than just numbers." The challenge had been laid bare. The executives exchanged glances, and for the first time Jake sensed a crack in their facade. The undercurrents of discomfort were palpable, sparking a flicker of hope within him. Real change, he realized, didn't happen without resistance, and he was prepared to confront it head-on. But the question still loomed larger than life. Would this confrontation lead to real reform, or would he face the full weight of their wrath? As the meeting unfolded with more questions from the executives, Jake's mind raced with potential outcomes. The dialogue was shifting, but it was far from over. What would be the cost of this confrontation? Feeling the weight of the room's attention now squarely on him, Jake braced himself. Perhaps true change required navigating the murky waters of his own fear and the harsh realities of corporate conflict. The stakes were higher than ever, and as the tension thickened, Jake knew one thing for certain: the fight was just beginning. Jake Evans felt the atmosphere in the conference room shift, a palpable tension replacing the air of corporate confidence that had blanketed the firm for too long. Each heartbeat echoed a blend of fear and unwavering resolve coursing through him. He had stepped into the unknown, and there was no turning back now. As waves of skepticism bounced around the table, he sensed a resistance that would test not just his arguments, but his very identity. Yet each whisper of doubt pushed him further toward a singular truth. He needed to embody the change he sought. He leaned closer to the table, channeling the collective sentiment he had gathered from his colleagues. "Our clients trust us to uphold ethical standards," he said, his voice unwavering as it cut through the murmur of discontent. "We can't merely claim integrity, we must act on it. If we ignore these values, we will erode the foundation of the very relationships we rely on." The executives exchanged uneasy glances, their expressions shifting from disdain to cautious curiosity. Jake pressed on, feeling the momentum build. "Every statistic we glance at is not just a number, it represents a family, a life affected by our decisions. Are we willing to sacrifice that for short-term gains?" A sudden ripple of agreement from a few colleagues at the table emboldened Jake, a momentary crack in the executive armor that sparked a glimmer of hope within him. But the CEO, unwavering in his stance, spoke up. "You're saying we should prioritize feelings over fiscal responsibility. This isn't feasible." The challenge ignited a fire within Jake, shaking off any lingering uncertainties. "It's not about bypassing responsibility. It's about aligning our fiscal strategies with our ethical compass," he challenged, passionate yet composed. "A long-term vision of profitability must include a commitment to ethical behavior." The exchanges morphed into a dialogue, a tug-of-war between corporate bravado and ethical considerations. With each point Jake articulated, he felt like a sculptor chiseling a fragile statue into a resilient piece of art. He realized that this moment was not merely a professional battle for recognition. It was personal, heralding his transformation from an ambitious lawyer to a champion of truth. The meeting spiraled as more colleagues chimed in, inspired by Jake's courage. They lent their voices, sharing stories from the trenches, painting a vivid picture of the disconnect between the company's supposed values and the gritty realities faced by clients and employees alike. However, looming concerns still weighed heavily on Jake's heart. Would their rebellion against the status quo solidify their purpose, or would it lead them down a path of retribution, risking their careers in the process? Then a voice sliced through the tension, a colleague from the back. "What's our plan if this fails, if we step up and nothing changes but our titles and paychecks?" The room fell silent. The stark question lingered as Jake met the gaze of his supporters, feeling their unseen support fueling his resolve. He had a choice to make, a decision that would either solidify this newfound camaraderie or scatter it. Before he could second-guess himself, Jake spoke again, projecting not just confidence but deep conviction. "If I may address that concern, standing up and speaking out, taking this risk for accountability and integrity, is not just a consequence, it's our legacy. What will we leave behind if we don't fight for what's right?" Suddenly the tension shifted. Jake could see heads nodding, and the executive's facade wavered. Was this the turning point they had all needed? The passion of the collective voices had triggered something monumental, and what had begun as an anonymous struggle evolved into a shared crusade. As the meeting drew to a close, their resolve had transformed into palpable momentum. Jake walked out with a renewed sense of purpose, the weight of uncertainty replaced by the understanding that he had both challenged and embraced his identity. In the week that followed, word spread within the office like wildfire. The executives, faced with the chorus of discontent, began to waver, putting plans in motion that acknowledged the team's concerns. Jake was approached with gratitude from colleagues eager to collaborate on fostering a more ethical approach moving forward. The ripple effects of their united stand had initiated a wave of change. Reflecting on his journey, Jake realized that he had not just rediscovered his voice, he had evolved. Each confrontation honed his skills as a mediator and advocate, proving that true success lies not only in the accolades or promotions, but in the integrity behind one's actions. At his desk, he no longer felt the gnawing emptiness of ambition alone. Instead, a sense of fulfillment had taken root within him, a deep satisfaction blossoming through the shared journey of transformation. He stood proud, not just as a lawyer, but as an architect of change, using the lessons learned to reforge his professional identity. Jake Evans had conquered the shadows of doubt and emerged victorious, a fallen hero rising to lead the charge for ethical standards in the corporate world. Integrity was not just an ideal for him anymore, it was his badge of honor, one that he wore without hesitation. This was the moment when he fully embraced his purpose, no longer in pursuit of success defined by titles, but in championing a lasting positive impact on those around him, an achievement he had never thought possible. Now, dear viewers, this is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe now to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and ensure this content reaches those who need inspiration. Comment your reactions and theories about this powerful ending. We want to hear from you. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Together, let's continue this journey of personal overcoming. Your support makes all the difference.